This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
So last week, it's kind of been a fun journey to listen to people talking about watching church and deciding there was nobody here, or driving through the driveway. There really was church. It was quite fun. But the gospel we got last week was complicated. Because the gospel that we had last week started out with, you are salt, you are light, let your light shine. And then it went into this whole thing about the law. So what I did is we have went back and picked up some of last week's reading, and we're putting this whole law thing all together as one great big package. So the law. Now, when Jews would have heard the law, they probably would have thought two things. First of all, the law, the Ten Commandments, very directly. But the Jews had gone on to create 613 other laws to help explain the commandments and what was permissible and what was not permissible. But today, we're going to put the 613 aside, and we're going to focus on the law in terms of the Ten Commandments, God's law to us. Now, as we think about those commandments and what God asks us to do, what God says we shouldn't do, I think that maybe there's some teenager left over in each one of us, that God must have given us those laws because God didn't want us to have any fun at all. And the opposite is true. If we live in the shadow of the commandments, life will actually be fuller. Life will actually be more beneficial, because the Ten Commandments constrain behavior and restrain evil. Constrain behavior, restrain evil. They help us to make good choices and to live well. So let's just think about a couple of them. First commandment, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods. Well, you know what, folks? If we managed to do that one, there wouldn't be need for the other 9. It's first because it's the most complicated. It is impossible, because the reality is most every minute of most every day, the God of our life is the one who looks at us in the mirror. We love God, but we love that person in the mirror a whole bunch. And we want God's will in our life, but my goodness, can it please be on my timetable and the way I want it to be and how I see things? God, if you just listen to me, I could help you with this. There's our reality. The person in the mirror spends most of our life being our primary God. But you know what? We find lots of other gods too. And they may not be little tikis that sit in a corner. But absolutely anything that gets between this relationship is a god of sorts. Anything that interrupts it, anything that creates problems in this relationship has become a form of a god in our life. That's just one of them. How about remember the Sabbath and keep it holy? Oh, that's a tough one too. Sabbath, that's sleep-in day, that's waffle day, that's sports day. There's so many things to do on the Sabbath. I have a daughter who has done a marathon and is now training for her next race. Now, you don't just go out and run a marathon. You download a whole program of how you're going to work out and which day you're going to lift weights and which day you're going to run, and long days and short days. And in that program, you know what it says on there? A day of rest. Once again, the commandments are talking about things that we really need. We need days of rest. We need days that we spend time with this relationship. How about honor thy father and thy mother? And the other side of that, honor thy children. What happens when we don't? The family breaks down. What happens when the family breaks down? Society breaks down. Again and again, the commandments remind us of a way of living that is beneficial and helpful and healthy and positive. And we can't do it. We cannot do it. Little puddle, we can't do it. So today Jesus says to us, you've heard it said, remember those 10 commandments that we weren't doing so well on anyway? And now all of a sudden Jesus moves the puddle clear over here. Well, you've heard it said. How often when we think about laws or we think about the sins that we have committed, that we go right to that thing and we start ranking sins? You know, my sins and other people's sins and who are worse and who are better. And how often we said, well, at least I haven't killed anybody. And Jesus says to us today, yeah, you have. You may not have been with a knife behind the building doing somebody in. But whenever we hold malice against someone or wrath against someone, we have killed them. Whenever we speak gossip or a story about somebody, did you hear what they did this time? We have stolen their reputation. And folks, you know that whole coveting thing? We have an entire economy based upon it. 10 commandments we weren't doing so well with. And Jesus takes it and takes it even further. And there's a point in it. The point is, the first use of the law is to constrain behavior and restrain evil. But the second use of the law is to convict. You see, the law cannot save us. The law convicts that we fall short. It condemns us and it kills us. And that actually turns into the good news. Because when we finally figure out we can't make the jump on our own, that's when we go back to that first commandment. We are not God. God is God. The second use of the law is it convicts us and it sends us right to the lap of Jesus. When we understand we can't make the leap, then we are finally at the place to understand where the only source of hope and righteousness and forgiveness is. Christ alone. Christ alone.
Well, this light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, I let my little light shine. Oh, Jesus gave me light, I'm gonna let it shine.